Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. Yeah, I don't have that. So here to do another Fates Warning video, album video, to go along with the whole series. I just did the video about 1988's No Exit. You know, 1988 it was the same year that King's X released their debut album, Out of the Silent Planet. A lot of stuff was happening in 1988. So the next year, I mean, they made fast work after John Arch leaves. They do No Exit and they tour for it. And then they released, literally next year, it was August 22nd, 1989, about a year and a half later. So they were very prolific between Awaken the Guardian, that was like 2 years, but it's like between 84 and 89, they released Perfect Symmetry, which would be their fifth album. Which I guess, you know, you compare the 70s, especially prog bands and all the bands, you know, some bands were releasing 2 albums a year. I guess it's not as prolific as it sounds. It just sounds like, you know, and it's common with young bands. I mean, the guys were in their mid-20s at this point. Ray Alder, the new singer, relatively new singer, was 21 or something, 20 or 21 at this point. But, so this is 1989's Perfect Symmetry. This is the first album with new drummer Mark Zonder, the departure of the original drummer Steve Zimmerman. The second album with Ray Alder. So I mean, Fates Warning, unlike a lot of bands, of course, too, that endured, had a lot of lineup changes. Their band is filled with lineup. They're not like Rush, filled with lineup changes. Here is one of the remasters I got. I'm not at this point finding my original compact disc. I believe I have a compact disc, and I was mentioning on the No Exit video. I have I had cassette tapes. I still do, probably in a box on the basement. So, but so you know the departure. Well, let me just show these quickly. So this is this is probably 2007, like the 2008. So they were doing this series, 2008 remaster, which comes with a demo CD and a bonus DVD. Of course, much like the No Exit, they're releasing just remasters for everything. You know, when I discovered, I was suggested Fates Warning, I was getting into them, and I discovered them. This album, and parallels the next album, which probably won't be until next week. I'll be talking about it. I'm not sure if I have time tomorrow. Were the albums that I kind of thought of them most. And again, I was kind of Faith No More is another. I was talking about bands that they kind of remind me of that era, the late 80s. Faith No More, the hair metal, you know, like Tesla, Skid Row. I mean, they were more. I saw one magazine article, early 90s, like Metal, and that wasn't Metal Edge. I forget which, Hit Parade or something, called them Pomp Rock. And again, so but this album, showing the pictures and stuff, you know, the same lineup. This has the same lineup as No Exit, other than the drummer change. But I think, to me, this was definitely, like, No Exit was a little bit of a departure, sort of in image and style, from Awaken the Guardian and Spectre Within. This, to me, it's almost like Rush. I was just listening to it today. There's a huge, like, late 80s Rush sort of image. Sound-wise, a little bit too, but you look at this could be like Rush's, like, younger brother band. The image with the man, though, it's like, I know Metallica had done the one video showing an old man, I think. It was something about metal, hard rock and metal, that they were into really showing. Oh, that's the little cover thing. They're into showing, like, these old men. Well, the thing is, like, when I got into Fates Warning in the mid-90s, I remember I was looking for other bands. I had gotten into Dream Theater long before that, and of course the aftermath of being a huge Rush fan. They suggested a band called Sanctuary, which none of the members, I think the singer at least, Worrell Dane, went on to do Nevermore. I never fully got into them, but that Sanctuary was one of the bands. But I remember that I bought the one Sanctuary CD, like Into the Black, I think it is, or Into the Mirror Black, and it's got an old man on it. I don't know what it was about. This is a little sticker. I don't know what it was about, like, these old, you know, senior citizen men, like, you know, like veterans from war or something like that. I don't know what it was, like, about them, but here's the vinyl. The vinyl, I should just not forget here. This copy of vinyl, like, I remember seeing this. I would have bought it right away, but I wasn't. It might have been on Cheapo in Uptown before they moved to their current location, the one that was on Lake Street. I think they still do. They have, like, on the walls throughout the whole store, they have different vinyl records they display, and they have, like, a number by them, and that's the price. It's usually, like, I think it was $35. I paid a fair amount for this. You know, it seems like in pretty reasonable shape. I don't know how. I think this is a first pressing though. You know, in '89 vinyl was still happening, although it was not that long after this, of course. It became less common, of course, compact discs and then cassette tapes were really the thing, and then compact discs. But you know, I got this at cheapo when I was it was one of the first couple of years I was with my wife when I was buying vinyl in the early 2010s, because I've said it a few different times. I only didn't really start buying vinyl regularly until about 10 years ago, 2011, 2010, 2011, 2012. Here's the that same sheet, but I mean the image and sort of what they were going for, even their hair and stuff like that, was sort of, they were kind of, you know, trying to, oh, there's something else in here. They were trying to kind of drift away a little bit from, wow, a little bit from this sort of fantasy D&D dork kind of lyrics and storytelling, and being a little more modern seeming. This is interesting. I did not open this. I'm not going to show this person's name, Robert F. from Iowa. A guy from Iowa must have sold it to cheapo, but look at the address there. I don't know if that's still an address in Hartford, a P.O. box, if they still have that. But inside it looks like it was like a fan newsletter. I'm a member of the Fates Warning Club on Facebook, and this would probably be worth sharing. I don't have too many rarities. I have a few, but I actually possess something kind of rare. Now, it's not like super, super rare because this is a fan club, but wow. I mean, I was a member of the Dream Theater fan club, Marillion, of course, but that was much later. October 89. Jeff Wagner would probably be proud of this. Being, you know, just wrote the biography. The Ivory Tower, official newsletter so that must have been launched right around the time when '88, when Ivory Gates of Dean, you know, the new exit came out. Tour itinerary, and they of course didn't hit Minneapolis in that. It was November of probably '89, because the album was released in August. Wow, I had a thing on, you know, the Awake CD from Dream Theater had a little form like this that I always wish I'd saved. You could send in for something. I almost feel it was like a poster or something like that. And I think even though I bought it like well over a year after it came out, I always kick myself for not keeping it years later. You could get a Perfect Symmetry T-shirt, and oh good lord, look at this stuff. You know, it's funny when you finally open up some of your copies, because I tend to not always do that with vinyl because I want to kind of keep them as good condition as possible. But I have a John Anderson copy of his album Elias the Sunhillo, which has like an article and some other stuff that was published, and like an essay. I of course have the Toy Matinee press release of Toy Matinee on vinyl that I got from a guy from Wisconsin. But well, add this to the list. Maybe that's why they were charging $35 for this. I don't even know if the people at cheapo even were aware of it when where did I put that now? Right here. I don't know if they were aware of it, but let's get into the nitty gritty, and then I'm gonna have to show that. I'm gonna have to show the video, or maybe the video, or just do a scan or something soon. Perfect Symmetry has always been a record that highly praised, kind of like Awaken the Guardian, like among the Ray Alder area. Some people have always considered this the masterpiece, and a big part of that is because Mark Zonder was the drummer. Became the drummer, and listening to it again today, I was just kind of trying to almost listen specifically for a lot of the drums, because I listened to it many times, obviously, over the years. It's been 20 plus years, 5 years, but his drum parts are the production on the snare, the sound of the snare, it's not compressed, it's very isolated in a way, but very isolated in a good way, because it makes the drums and the snare sound stand out. It's very jazzy sounding too. I can understand and totally understand why this was so influential, so unique and different sounding. Very jazzy. It reminds me of Paul Wardigo, like from Pat Metheny's First Circle and some of that stuff. I mean, it's not quite that accurate, but it's pretty unique in that sense. On a couple songs, I would say At Fate's Hands especially, that sounds like Dream Theater, before Dream Theater, and that actually has Kevin Moore on it. Part of the Machine, Static Axe, yeah, I mean, pretty much throughout the whole album, Mark Zonder is really an all-star on this. It was really sort of, look, I'm the new drummer. I mean, it's not putting anything saying anything against Steve Zimmerman, because Steve Zimmerman was great, especially great for that music they were doing. But it's interesting how Mark Zonder really put his stamp on their sound. I remember when I got the Chasing Time compilation, which of course this album has Chasing Time. They had like notes from different members of the band, and Mark Zonder wrote about Through Different Eyes. And Through Different Eyes really was the first, what I would say, Fates Warning song that literally sounds like it would very well go on FM radio. Before this, every song, even Silent Cries, sounds more overtly metal. It sounds like a rock song, like a pop rock song with kind of, I mean, it does, of that era especially. And it's just a terrific track. I think it's probably the best sort of catchy pop track they ever wrote. I like it. It sounds like they did with the next album, and I'll get more into that on Parallels. They did a lot more of that even. But I think that song specifically is so, like, they just crafted that song so perfectly. Although I sometimes used to get mixed up when I first got into the band between that song and Eye to Eye. It's like, well, what album has Eye to Eye and what albums have Through Different Eyes? They both have the word eye in them. And one of Jim Mattheos there's probably stuff in Jeff Wagner's book about that. I always found that really weird when I first checked them out. It's like they're the band with the eye songs and stuff like that. But my favorite track, which is pretty common when people say they're the sort of number one, like go-to, opus or sort of trademark song on this record, is the closing track, Nothing Left to Say. It just has that amazing sort of build and climax and very earwormy. It's prog, and again, it's sort of, you take what they did with Aggregate to Dream, that's a prog suite, but Nothing Left to Say, they kind of did a similar thing in a smaller amount of time. It's like a mid-level epic. I think it's like 7 or 8 minutes. It couldn't, for radio, it's 8 minutes, 7:58. So, Static X, very kind of busy, like At Fate's Hands. Chasing Time is an absolute favorite of mine. I mean, in fact, if I were to write a book or an essay, I would probably, even though that was the name of the compilation, that would be my sort of, I think of Fates Warning, that's a perfect name that represents their music. I mean, Destination Onward I'm sure is great and worked for what Jeff Wagner was doing with that, but that to me, and they named their compilation after it for a good reason. Part of the Machine, they had that little reverb and little like backgroundy thing, which a lot of bands are doing that. I think even Kevin did that on Giraffe or on Toyman. It's like that where they sample something with like sort of reverb or distortion, and then they kind of up the volume and like echoing it. I think it's Part of the Machine, or I can't remember if it's The Arena. The other thing that's weird about this, I'll just get into it, has like a part that sounds like, Nothing Left to Say. Nothing Left to Say, the intro sounds a lot like Static X. Like, I never noticed that before. There's that little intro there's an instrumental section, but there's also parts of this that remind me of No Exit. So you can sort of see, I don't know if parts of this album like were originally thought of for No Exit that Jim had written. I don't know, Jim or Frank. But as far as The Arena goes, what was I thinking? Oh, in terms of the track list, I could be wrong, but because I listened to this probably the earliest time so many times on cassette, I always thought that side 2 always started with The Arena, but according to this, it's At Fate's Hands. They don't show cassette track. I'd have to go on to like Discogs or something. Maybe I'll do that later on another video. But yeah, because The Arena is the second track on here. I could be wrong, but this album, probably even more than even a No Exit, has a lot of parts where Ray is just kind of wailing. A little bit reminds me of Jimmy Necco. Like I don't know if Jimmy Necco's aware of, he's from New Jersey. It's not that far from Connecticut. If he was aware of Fates Warning or any prog metal much, probably knows Dream Theater, but he's just, he's doing a Rob Halford, thing with a lot of these lyrics, and you don't understand a word he's saying. So I have never thoroughly read through all the lyrics, but Nothing Left to Say and Chasing Time, you can understand him, but a World Apart, it's more of a ballad. It's slower. Words of Cunning, Shining, Stunning, Men of Grandeur. A lot of this is so poetic. Blinding, numbing, with winsome, wild, and specious, not spacious, SPECIOUS styles. it's a lot. It's a lot of just poetry than words that, to me, are they're evoking a message. But the arena, I just think of like the Native American dances or like those powwows, or I thought of the band arena a lot of times when I'm listening to this. You know, instead, I mean, to me, Static Axe is like prog metal. It's very mechanical sounding. That's people. This is the start of when Fates Warning seem to be sort of perfectionistic in terms of their sort of parts and riffs and sort of what's the word? Dynamics or syncopation. Part of the machine sounds like a grindy mechanical thing, you know, the title part of the machine. Now, I don't know if that's part of like the whole industry, the machine of the industry and stuff, but then this is the height of sort of hair metal, '88. Then, you know, Guns N' Roses, I was going to like bar mitzvah parties and stuff like that. Guns N' Roses and Def Leppard were everywhere, and like, you know, like I said, Tesla, you name it. I mean, but you know, it's like they were taking some of that influence, some of the thrash influence, and some of the progressive rock, especially because I mean, at times listening to this, I think it's at Fate's Hands. Sounds a lot at times like Rush's Natural Science. This to me, again, this is almost like a sequel to like Permanent Waves or something. There's a significant Rush. I don't know if it was Mark Zonder. Mark Zonder came from the band Warlord, who was like, I don't know, they were thrash metal. They were Nueva, you know, Nueva British. I mean, they were a metal band. You know, they were heavier. But I know he was a huge early Journey fan, but I'm sure he was a Peart fan too. So I mean, the Rush element on this album, even though No Exit, you know, on Navigator Team reminds me some of Hemispheres at times, it's more apparent on this album. There are other albums that they did later that it seems more apparent. Although Jethro Tull is the band that, to me, ultimately seemed to like be coming into their influence more than anything else. But yeah, I love this record. I don't consider it overhyped, but I don't consider it underhyped. It's frequently mentioned and frequently respected, but at the same time, other than Nothing Left to Say, there isn't like that sort of prog masterpiece work on it. Through Different Eyes is maybe their best sort of catchy track ever. It's sort of refined, sort of pop radio song, but as a whole, it's sort of like this is a collection of good songs with a few standouts, which they wrote a few other records like that. I'm not foreshadowing my rankings exactly, but I know a lot of people that say this is number one. In fact, I know a guy who was an Oceansize fan who loved Fates Warning too. But anyway, what's your take on Perfect Symmetry? 1988, the same year that whatever that was August of '88. I was just about to enter. It would have been 7th grade, yeah. Junior high and everything. That was when King's X's Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, or '89 rather, not '88, '89. So that was my next year. I was the same year as Gretchen Goes to Nebraska came out from King's X, so they were on Megaforce, and there's stuff about Megaforce in the Jeff Wagner book, because Megaforce wanted to sign them as interesting enough, but they were still on Metal Blade. The same year as, of course, Dream Theater's When Dream and Day Unite, and of course, Kevin Moore, played on at Fate's Hands before When Dream and Day Unite. I think I remember looking at the calendar before When Dream and Day Unite hadn't even been released, but Portnoy's probably relationship with them. I don't know how exactly that happened. Maybe Kevin got in touch and became friends with them or knew them before Portnoy, with Jim or whatever. I don't know. The book I'm sure explains a lot more detail. I'm not that far into the book, but the other notable thing with At Fate's Hands, I've always thought of, there's the At Fate's Fingers, which I think is an instrumental, which was included in the Chasing Time, compilation that came out in the mid '90s, which I bought, one of the first things I bought. But I don't think it's actually on here, which is weird. Maybe because of that, but why was At Fate's Fingers not on the demos? Maybe it was written later. No, it doesn't. I think it's like more acoustic and it's more instrumental, but yeah, the biggest thing for me is I got this envelope with this. I didn't even know that. Yeah, look at that. Fates Warning, fans. Well, I hope this person doesn't find a good. Anyway. But thank you for watching. What's your take on Perfect Symmetry? Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you next time.